Much for the very warm and kind introduction. I hope everyone can hear me clearly and the audio is good. So I'm just going to ask if we can get the presentation up on the second screen here, and then we can get going. Brilliant. Thanks so much. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the time today. Under this most unusual Decorex for all of us, but I think kudos to the organizers for still managing to basically pivot this into a new digital age. And although I'm sure we're all looking forward to a time where we can attend exhibitions and actually have contact with one another and see the work we're all producing, I think it's still great that we can connect as an industry at this time and sort of just touch base on what's happening. So thanks very much to the organizers for that as well. So I'm going to get straight started. So ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk a little bit about material trends. Because typically for us, when it comes to an exhibition, we look to source the newest materials we possibly can, as many exclusive materials as we can. And we use these shows like Decorex as an opportunity to showcase materials and showcase design ideas. So I think it is quite appropriate for us to actually look a little bit into some of the material trends for this year and beyond. So just before we get started, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about who we are for those of you who don't know the Kitchen Studio, just to give you a little bit more context as to why we are weighing in on this conversation. So just a quick snapshot of us. We're the Kitchen Studio, and really what we have become the most famous for is creating some of the most beautiful bespoke interiors in South Africa since 1994. So this year is our 26th-year anniversary. And, you know, we've always prided ourselves on being a rather unique company in that we do absolutely everything in-house. You know, we don't outsource any processes, we don't outsource any materials. Everything is done by our team, and it's something that we're very, very proud of. So just wanted to give us a quick snapshot of who we are, and then a high-level overview of kind of what we're all about. You know, like I said, we've been in the industry for 26 years this year. And in that time, we've installed over 40,000 kitchens. We've got a team of about 450 full-time staff. We are manufacturing across 4 facilities throughout the country. We are warehousing in those same spaces. We have showrooms throughout KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng and the Western Cape. We've got vehicles on the road all around the country. And what we're talking about today is obviously materials and finishes. And we are quite proud to have over 100 exclusive finishes available to us and our customers. And, you know, like we've touched on, exhibitions, shows like this are incredibly important to us. And we've been really lucky to have been honored at every show we've been to since 1994, basically. I mean, we haven't been to a show where we haven't picked up at least one award. So we're very proud of that. And just a quick snapshot of, you know, I mentioned the fact that we do absolutely everything in-house, and this is just a little glance into one of our factories in KwaZulu-Natal, which focuses on our high-volume work and contracts. So, truly bespoke designs. You know, what does that really mean, and why are we talking about it, and how is it relevant in the context of materials? Well, you know, we really believe that if you want to design anything you can imagine, you need to have not just the design expertise, but also access to the materials and knowledge of the materials and their application. And that is something we've become very proud of. You know, we really believe that in order to deliver really bespoke designs to customers, you have to constantly be introducing new materials to both them and to the market in general. So when we talk about materials, what sort of range of materials are we talking about? What are the categories, so to speak? And, you know, we feel that this is a really, really good example. And interestingly, this is actually a kitchen that was designed almost 5 years ago. And what we found is that it's taken quite a while for the market to sort of get up to speed with these sorts of material trends and these sorts of design trends. I mean, you know, Anita touched on it earlier. We're very lucky in that we are able to travel to the best exhibitions around the world. And we're able to see what, you know, our partners in the UK, in Europe, and the US are actually doing when it comes to material fabrication and design. And so this is an example of a kitchen that was designed almost half a decade ago, if you can believe it. And we now feel is actually starting to get a lot of traction. So the reason we're showing you this is because it's a very, very good example of mixed materials. And it's a big part of the sort of concept behind what we're talking about today. So if you look at this kitchen, it's very clearly one idea. There's some very sort of uniform, if you want to call it, design thinking. Everything's tied together by the wooden frames and sort of the neutral color palette. But if you had to investigate this kitchen much more closely, what you would find is that it uses a broad range of materials. It uses beam oak solid worktops. It uses classic gray stained glass and a Hoffman wooden frame door with stays. It uses walnut veneer for wall paneling on the back wall. It uses quartz. We're all very familiar with quartz as a synthetic work surface. It uses copper laminate. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it uses a copper-colored laminate that we use almost as skirting around some of our worktops. It features things like French oak, painted solid beech. So, here's an example, and there are actually a lot more materials that have gone into a design like this than I've called out here. But this is just a prime example of, in order to achieve really, really outstanding designs, you first need to start with materials. If you don't have access to the materials, you're always going to be somewhat limited in what you can execute. So this is a perfect example of that. So when we talk about finishes, what are the sort of areas we're talking about when we talk about finishes? Well, first and foremost, and the one that everyone kind of always leaps to, is door finishes, door and cupboard finishes. So those can range from synthetic to natural finishes, things like wood veneers, solid wood, acrylics, glass, and so on. And we'll touch on those in a little bit more detail. When we talk about finishes, we're also talking about worktops, of course. And worktops, again, have a broad array of both synthetic and natural finishes, and we'll touch on those in a little bit too. When we talk about finishes, we're also talking about hardware, because we believe that the interior of your cupboard needs to be as functional and as beautiful as the exterior. And I think that's where perhaps a lot of designers don't get it entirely right. You don't just stop at the aesthetic. It has to be as beautiful all the way through as it is on the outside. And then finally, when we're talking about finishes, we're also talking about accessories. What are you doing inside your cupboards that is actually bringing them to life? Because a lot of these accessories that we're going to talk about now they're more than just functional. They are actually aesthetically beautiful too, and they form the entire package that you get when you buy a designer or high-end kitchen. So these are sort of the areas that you should be looking at when you are talking about finishes, you're talking about materials, and how you're going to bring a concept and a design together. These are sort of the main topics that you should be considering. And really, the reason why you need to have this holistic approach to materials and this sort of 360-degree view is because it does allow you endless possibilities. This is another kitchen that we designed, I think, 3 years ago. We call it the in-frame kitchen. And while this is much more in the classic contemporary space and uses fewer materials than the previous kitchen I showed you, it's also an example of how the finish, the worktop, the hardware, and the accessories all come together to make one single-minded idea in one very, very beautiful space. So you might not be able to see, depending on how big your screen is, but if you can look at the hinges on the outside of the door, if you look at the fully 90-degree exposed hinge, if you look at the butler pantry and the way those doors open, if you look at the build-up on the worktop, all of these are made possible by having access to the right sorts of materials. And it's something that we pride ourselves on, and we've always prided ourselves on being able to source the most exciting and also functional and useful materials we can possibly find for our customers in our market. And, it's not just about having the right materials. It's not just about having a brilliant design. It's also knowing where you should be using your various materials, because not all materials can be applied in all the exact same ways to equal effect. And so whether you're doing a kitchen, a bedroom, bathroom vanity, a pub or a bar, wall paneling, or freestanding furniture, it's very important to consider the material you're selecting and how it actually functions in that space. For example, if you have a very sort of hard-wearing kitchen and you use it a lot, and you genuinely cook a lot for your family or you entertain a lot, you're going to want to have a work surface and a covered finish that accommodates that lifestyle, something that's tough, something that's going to withstand the bumps and knocks of daily life. Whereas if you've got a dresser or a bathroom vanity, you could perhaps afford to use something that's somewhat more delicate, because it's a lighter use area in the house and it doesn't call for such a tough material. So it's very important that whoever you are working with, to build your home, whoever your supplier is, whether they're an established kitchen company or even a carpenter, you need to make sure that they know and you know where materials should be going, because they don't just, it's not one size fits all, so to speak. And I think the really good kitchen companies out there will advise their clients. The really good interior designers will advise their clients and point them in the right direction. I think we've always got a responsibility to give the customer what they want, but customers don't always know what they want and they don't always know what's best for them. So we need to be professionals in the industry and really guide them along that way as well. So we've chosen to look at a couple of key materials and finishes today. And before we start though, there's quite an interesting thing that happens in our industry too, which is this conversation around brands. And when it comes to sort of the building industry, the furniture industry, cabinetry and so on, brands play a little bit of a strange role, because the end product that a customer sees is a fully fabricated product. It's a cupboard, it's a worktop, it's a piece of furniture. And often, unless it's, all synthetic, customers don't always know exactly what's going into their kitchen, into their finished product. And, there's a couple of brands that are particularly well known in South Africa. And we find in our experience that these are the brands that customers, always bring up. But it's not because they are the best brands. It's far from it. It's because it's what the customer knows. There's that old famous Henry Ford saying, which is, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And I always think about that. We always discuss that sort of idea here. And it goes back to what I was saying. We need to give the customer what they want and what they're looking for, but we need to tell them about what they don't know, because they don't know what they don't know. And if we look at brands like this, these are brands that we stock, for example. If we had to zoom in on brands, entry-level brands like PG Bison, Neiman and Senna, which, believe it or not, very much are the entry-level synthetic brands. And we might not think that, or we might debate that simply because they're so well known. But they're well known because these brands they were early entrants into the market, and they've done a very good job of marketing themselves. But the reality is that because they're well known doesn't actually make them the best brands, and it doesn't always result in the best product. I think the same can be said for Caesarstone. It's a fantastic product. But many customers come in and ask for it by name, and ask for it before they ask for things like Decton and Lapitech, simply because it's what they know. So it's really important for us as an industry, it's really important for us as a business in particular, to constantly introduce customers to the new and best brands that are out there in the world. So for example, Rehau, which you can see in the top left corner, which is in the column of the synthetic cupboard finishes. Rehau is one of the most outstanding board manufacturers in the world, if not the finest board manufacturer in the world. And yet they are not particularly well known in South Africa. They're known for their range of acrylics, their Arvisio range, their crystals, their metallic range, which is coming soon to South Africa. This is the perfect example of how, while PG Bison do make a fantastic product, it is an entry-level product. And I think well-versed people in the industry know that, and hopefully we are telling our customers that. But we need to also constantly introduce them to new brands like the Rehaus. For example, Rehau manufactures components for BMWs. So you can just imagine the quality of their board. If you look at the center column, if you look at Hettish, Italiana, etc. Hettish is a reasonably well-known brand in South Africa. We are a big fan of their hardware and their fittings, their outstanding quality. But then there's also lesser-known brands like Italiana Ferramente, and they make specialized fittings that allow you to do wonderful and unusual things with your cupboards, like hang very, very heavy cupboards off a wall without any additional support. If you look at CJ, which is another brand we'll touch on in a little bit, they make pull-out ladders and other organizational accessories for cupboards. Another brand that's not particularly well-known, Italian designed and made products, fantastic stuff. But again, we need to introduce that to the market and find, extractor brands like Felmek and Elica. And we've just touched on some of the worktop brands like Rootstone, who make a really outstanding quartz, Caesarstone, who we obviously all know in the industry, Decton, Frankie, and the Studio Collection. So, we were just talking a little bit about synthetic versus natural and so on and so on. So just to kind of jog everyone's memory, when we're talking about synthetic finishes, we're talking about finishes like acrylics, wraps, Juco, for example. But, these are all very well-known things. And again, what we need to focus on doing is introducing our customers to the latest and best materials. So, for example, Slimline 2mm semi-tempered glass. Up until quite recently, the only way you could get your hands on glass like this in South Africa was to import it. As of about 2 years ago, we actually set up a glass plant in one of our manufacturing facilities, and we now manufacture the entire thing from scratch. We import the tempered glass, and we fabricate everything else here. So, this is an example of a synthetic material that is still, although it's not new internationally, in our market locally here, it is still new. It is still very hard to come by, but it makes for a fantastic, fantastic door finish, and we'll touch on that in a moment. Like I mentioned, you've got brands like Rehau, we've got their Visio range, their acrylic doors, their crystals, which we'll talk about in a second, and a whole host more synthetic finishes, which obviously tend to suit contemporary style a lot better than they do classic. Then when it comes to veneers, there isn't just one type of veneer, of course. There's a number of categories of veneers. You've got real wood veneers. You've got exotic veneers, like the ones that we bring in directly from across the world. And then you've got engineered veneers, which have a whole host of benefits to them. So just very quickly, and just to explain the difference, a real wood or an exotic wood veneer is exactly what you think it is. It is a very thin sliver of wood taken right off the timber, whereas an engineered veneer is a processed it's real wood that is processed and that is then produced in a consistent pattern. So if you imagine every single sheet of this veneer is completely consistent. So if you had a very big application and you wanted to really have that really strong, consistent look and feel, it's a brilliant product. We're also very proud that we do all of our own veneering. Sorry, one moment. We are very proud to do all of our own veneering internally here as well. And it allows us to bring in all these exotic veneers and these exotic woods and really push the boundaries of what's happening with these materials. Solid wood, timber, of course. It is still very popular, we find, surprisingly so, considering how much the market's moved towards sort of square lines and contemporary styles. But, as people in the industry who've been in the industry for a while and who are quite knowledgeable will know, solid wood is just about unbeatable in that it ages brilliantly, it can withstand so much, and if it's designed really well, it can truly be timeless. Every now and then we come across, actually quite a lot more often than every now and then, but we'll have an old customer contact us from some of our early days in the 90s and early 2000s where solid wood was a lot more popular. And it's always so nice to hear back from them and to actually see the state of their kitchens and how well they've aged, and it's brilliant. So what we wanted to just say about solid woods is that there are so many solid woods and timbers available out there. We really focus on bringing in exclusive timbers as well. So we don't use local timbers. We don't really use local timbers. We use locally available international timbers, or we bring in the timbers ourselves. And that's purely because, again, we are always trying to push the boundary in what you can have in your home. And we always want to make sure we can offer a design that's as unique and sort of long-lasting and well-made as possible. And then lastly, and we've touched on it a couple of times now, is stone. And again, I think we all know the difference between the natural and synthetic stones. The natural stones are, of course, granite, which is incredibly popular, and marble. And the synthetic stones range from quartz, which, like I said, is the most well-known of all the synthetic stones. But again, it's the entry level of the synthetic stones. And it's the one that customers always come in and ask for. And yes, we'll do it if they really want it. But we also make sure we go out of our way to introduce them to other synthetic finish worktops, such as Lapitech, Decton, Frankie's worktops, and a whole host of others, Neolith and so on. So these are sort of the sort of key terms when we're talking about synthetic, when we're talking about veneers, solid stones. This is the general area in which we're talking about these things, and I think it's very important for us as industry professionals to be explaining this to our customer. So now just to zoom in on a couple of materials in particular that we're very excited about. So like I mentioned, 2mm slimline semi-tempered glass. So this is from exhibitions we did last year, including Decorex. I think this photograph was actually taken at our exhibition at Decorex last year, where we won Best Overall Exhibitor. And just to tell you a little bit more about slimline glass. So, what is it all about and why does it matter? Why should our customers care about it? Why should the industry care about it? Well, it's quite simple, really. Glass doors, square line doors, synthetic doors are very popular. They're extremely popular. And like I mentioned earlier, it's the reason why people come in asking for the entry-level brands like the Neemans and PG Bisons and Cellos. But when it comes to glass, not all glass is created equal. And the more high end of a glass board you buy, what you are really getting is a flawlessness. So if you had to look at the sort of entry-level glasses, you get an effect that we call in the industry that orange peel effect. So if you had to hold it up to light, you might see some dimples and some ripples in the finish. The more you level up in terms of the brand or in terms of the quality of the actual material, the better the glass level. Glass, semi-tempered glass, is at the very, very top of that pyramid, or at the top of that list. And that's why we should care about it, and that's why it matters. For a customer or a client looking for a truly outstanding contemporary design and contemporary finish, there isn't a better choice for them than glass. Simply because, like I said, it gives you that flawless mirror-like glass. So that's the thing that really excites us about glass. The other thing is that it gives you a very slim profile. So it's 2mm of the material, of the actual glass, pressed onto board. So it's got a very, very slim profile and it looks very modern, and it's got a very sort of seamless finish to it. And then lastly, in terms of how it wears, it's scratch resistant and it's UV resistant. So in terms of it being sort of exposed to sunlight, near windows, near a lot of direct light, it's not something you have to worry about nearly as much as with other synthetic materials, which are much more adversely affected by direct light. And if you look at the image that we've got there, at the moment we offer glass doors in a variety of colors. So, your sort of classic grays, whites, blacks, champagne colors, bronzy colors, silvers. And we're finding that it's, again, similar to the kitchen that we showed you that we built 5 years ago. We often find ourselves early, which is not a bad thing. And it's something that we always strive to do. And we're now finding that glass has really, really taken off in the last sort of year and a half. And I'm sure with a lot of thanks to the exhibitions that we showed these products at last year, including Decorex. Another material that I've touched on a couple of times, which I just want to tell you a little bit more about, is Rehouse crystal. So like I mentioned, glass sits at the very top of the pyramid, and the reason we say that is because of the high gloss level more than anything else. Rehouse sort of sits one step down. And while Rehouse called the product crystal, it is actually a type of glass. It's actually a combination of glass and other polymers, which is why they don't call it glass. But essentially, for all intents and purposes, it is glass. Again, though, if you held a slimline glass sample next to a Rehouse sample, while they're both really outstanding sort of high-end finishes, you will see that the glass is a little bit better than the crystal. Similarly, if you hold crystal up to acrylic and acrylic up to melamine and so on, you'll see how that glass level basically starts to deteriorate, for lack of a better word, as you sort of go down the spectrum. So that's why we're kind of focusing on sort of the top of the pyramid, the less talked about, the less sort of discussed finishes that we really feel we need to push in the market. So yeah, again, it's quite a near flawless glass. What's really great about the crystal range of products is it also comes in matte. And I'm sure I don't need to emphasize it enough, because I'm sure pretty much everyone here in the industry will be aware of this. But matte finishes are very popular. They have been for the last couple of years, and we foresee them being popular for a good couple of years to come. It doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. If anything, it's becoming more and more popular. So what's nice about crystal is that you get the glass effect, so you get all the benefits of glass, but you can also have it in matte, which makes it even more contemporary and very, very on trend for this sort of moment in time. And very importantly, what you get with synthetic, with Rehouse crystal doors and acrylic doors is a matching balancing sheet on the back of the board. And you might be wondering why that's such a great benefit. Well, we now offer, we found that color interiors were becoming increasingly popular. And we now offer a whole variety of color interiors for our cupboards. We offer the sort of classic gray and the storm gray. We offer a champagne color, an aluminium style color. And what's really nice is to have a totally uniform interior to a cupboard from the outside and the inside. So, for example, if you had to buy our gray 2mm slimline, our gray Reha crystal, or even our gray slimline glass, you could have a matching interior with that as well. And we showed a kitchen like that last year at Decorex, and we have kitchens like that at all of our showrooms around the country. So having a matching backing has become a really important thing for us too, with our high-end designs, and we want to make sure that we can offer a really single-minded design, and that's why it's important to have color interiors and matching balancing sheets. Something that's coming quite soon, and all I can show you for now is really a teaser. But Reha are bringing this acrylic Visio and crystal range in metallics. And this is another color trend that we're seeing become very, very popular. We have over the years, again, that 5-year-old kitchen had copper laminate, so it had a metallic touch to it. These are more contemporary, so to speak. They've got like a brushed metallic finish, and they come in champagne, titanium, tungsten, aluminium colors. So these will be coming to the country quite soon, and there'll be another fantastic synthetic finish for us to be offering the market. Now, when we talk about finishes, we always focus on cupboards, and we always focus on freestanding furniture and tops. But another really interesting thing that we just wanted to touch on quickly is wall paneling. Now, this is wall paneling done in the traditional style. So this is not simply molding stuck onto plaster, nor is this a molding stuck directly onto a wall or anything like that. This is built up solid timber wall paneling. So basically every single panel in every single spot of your house is designed completely custom and made for you. And the reason we wanted to touch on it, because we talk about finishes and how hard the cupboards and the worktops and the furniture has to work, and it does. But it is not really it shouldn't be the only tool in your arsenal to really transform a space. And the image you're looking at is wall paneling that we did for a client's house in KwaZulu-Natal over the end of last year. And here are just a few more views of it. So you can see that it really, really does completely change a space. I mean, in both of those shots, they aren't dress shots. They're not full of furniture and full of art and accessories, and yet they are objectively elegant and beautiful. And so it's definitely something to also start considering. It's something that we want to start seeing more of in the market. But your wall paneling is a brilliant way to finish a room and not just a built-in cupboard or kitchen. Just the last few things to go through. So we wanted to just touch on, we mentioned hardware earlier and how important that is in terms of your material selection. So, one of our preferred brands is CJ, and they're an Italian brand that we import directly. And we bring it in 3 ranges: the green line, the Infinity Plus line, and the Material Evo line. So I just see we have a question here, which I'm just going to answer quickly. Does your company offer kitchen design courses, or can you recommend a kitchen design course, please? What I'm going to do is I will check with our head of drawing afterwards. There are a couple of people we have worked with, and then we can share them with the Decorex organizers, and then they can hopefully update everyone with that recommendation. So I can do that as soon as we're done here. So these are some examples of the CJ accessories and hardware. And again, this is a perfect example where you can see the interior. You've got like a linen textured interior, which matches the cupboard on the outside. And then you've got these very, very beautiful accessories, which really bring the inside of the cupboard to life as well. So, the beauty doesn't just stop on the outside. It's you're proud of the way the kitchen looks all the way through. So ladies and gentlemen, oh no, sorry, there was one more to show you. And these are some of the tall pull-out ladders and the corner units that you also get from CJ. And again, you can just see that it becomes a design element in itself. They're really beautifully designed, they're really well manufactured, and it really just transforms the inside of a cupboard. So that is all I have to say. I'll be very happy to take some questions. And while I wait for those, if there are any, okay, it seems there aren't any. So yeah, thank you very much for the time today. I hope it's been informative. I think, it has been a very difficult year for the whole country, for the whole world. And I think particularly for our industry, I think we know that it's been a considerably difficult year for our industry, but it gives me a lot of hope to see the companies that have soldiered through this period, who continue to go out there and do great work. And, hopefully we can keep pushing the envelope forward, keep growing the industry, attracting more talent, bringing in more of these awesome materials, and really at the end of the day, keep creating beautiful homes and beautiful interiors, because that is ultimately what we set out to do. So thank you very much. Really appreciate the time. Oh, seems like there's a question coming. So we've got a question, which is, what is the impact resistance of the Slimline glass finish? And it's actually it's an excellent question, and it's something that we get asked quite a lot. So the one downside to glass, and it's true of crystal as well, is that it is very tense. It's a very tense material. So if it takes a very sharp and very heavy, and I mean, you really have to go out of your way. I'm not talking about sort of the bumps and knocks of daily life. I'm talking about knocking over like a sculpture on a glass worktop. It can crack. And the downside to glass is that you can't just drill through it. We use very specialized material to drill through it. So if you do crack a facade of a glass door, you have to replace the glass door. So that is a very, very, very important, very valid question. And, it does go back to what we were saying earlier, which is your material selection, wherever it is in the house, it needs to be suitable for that space. So, we tend not to use glass in areas of homes where we believe it's going to be extremely high traffic, So if you're someone who entertains a hell of a lot, we would suggest putting glass cabinets or glass doors in maybe the wall units or back units, but using maybe a tougher material in the front. It's perfect for things like, bars, vanities, built-in cupboards. It's really, really outstanding for that sort of thing. But in terms of its impact resistance, there definitely are materials that are stronger in terms of impact resistance. But the big upside you get to glass is its scratch resistance. So while an acrylic door might have a stronger impact resistance, it's going to be scratched a lot more easily. It's going to be damaged and fade and yellow and that sort of thing a lot more easily. So with all materials, there's trade-offs. And it's quite funny. It does remind me of the shows, and that's kind of why we missed them so much this year, because it's great to have these kinds of conversations. It's the same as worktops. The truth is that the strongest worktops you can get are sintered stone worktops in terms of synthetic worktops, or granite worktops. But all worktops, including granite worktops, can be damaged. There's no such thing as a material in your kitchen which is impenetrable or can withstand absolutely anything. They all do have some degree of exposure to damage. But I think our biggest advice is to make sure you're using the right materials and the right applications and in the right rooms in your house. Great. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And good luck with the rest of the weekend.